Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our class today on this Tuesday, April 20th. Welcome to the part 2 of Rotted, Recycled, and Resurrected. And today, Dr. Lester is going to cover the fungus among us. Just another part of the life cycle that's going on in our yard. Last week, we covered digging into soil science with our master gardener, Bernie Bathauer, and he did a great job explaining to us about Florida soils and what they have become over the years, what they used to be as compared to what they are now, and how we can learn to deal with them. You can find that program on my Facebook page, Hernando FFL program. I'm sure Bill has shared it on his page, and it is also on Hernando County Government YouTube channel, as will be today's program. They will be on both Facebook pages by this afternoon, and on the Hernando County Government, you got to put government in there, YouTube channel to watch. And it takes them a little bit longer, so by next week, if not sooner, it'll be on the YouTube channel. Before Dr. Lester gets started talking about algae and fungus and all those fun things, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Florida-friendly landscaping, just in case you happen to have forgotten the 9 principles. Here they are. And today we're going to be covering pretty much recycling. I think number 7 is kind of the job of algae and fungus. And, it all works together. What looks like rotting dead stuff in our yard is actually bringing forth new life. So that's the purpose of this whole series. And because I am from the water department, I just want to remind you, even probably in St. Augustine, I imagine it's been kind of a rainy week, or we're coming up upon a rainy week. No reason really to have your irrigation system on this week. In Hernando County, we are on 1 day a week watering. This is a permanent situation. This is not a temporary thing. This is how it is. So yesterday, I had to go out early in the morning, which is not a favorite thing of mine to do, but that's beside the point. And I saw some sprinklers. Now it was getting ready to rain. You could feel getting ready to rain at any time. We all have access to weather apps and everything. We know we're going to have a rainy week. This irrigation system was on. It was in a commercial building, watering this, the road, and we know it was getting ready to rain. The person who wants to be a good conservationist and a good steward of our resources will let Mother Nature water their lawns and water their landscapes. I think this week we're going to get more than enough. We can turn those systems off. Here are just some resources that I already mentioned, where you can not only watch the recordings of these programs, but find out upcoming programs. We also share information from other counties, maybe programs they're going to have, maybe just something really interesting that they had to say. I share from Pasco County, I share from Citrus quite a bit. So, just resources to learn. And here are, after this program, this series continues next Tuesday. Dr. Lester's going to talk to us about beetles and other cleanup crews. This one actually requires a registration, doesn't it, Dr. Lester?
Yes, it does, but it's very simple.
Yes, so look on our Facebook pages at the event, or I think I have shared it. I will share it very soon if I hadn't. Look on Bill's, and it'll walk you through the registration process. And that's just so he can get a feel, for who's watching and, who he's reaching. Then we're going to have a week off from this series because Lily's moving back to the office.
Oh, boy.
Yay. And I'll need that week to kind of get things in order. So then the following week, and it'll be on a Wednesday, bringing it all back home at the office. But I'm gonna discuss the beetles, the fungus, the soil, all of that. How do we deal with that in our own yards? What does that mean to us on our own property? So that's what's coming up. Lots of other classes as well. If you are interested in a rain barrel, just a rain barrel, I have two. There he is. We were talking about Buddy. I have two just rain barrel classes coming up. One is tomorrow, and it's at the Chinsegut Conservation Center. That is not the Manor House. It's down the road from the Manor House at 23212 Lake Lindsay Road in Brooksville. If you want to go to a class tomorrow, the rain barrels are $50. You have to email me now because when we're done with this, I'm going to go pack up the rain barrels into my van. Oh, there's going to be another one on May 26th. Our May 20th class that includes rain barrels and compost bins is full. That's a virtual class. There will be another virtual class in June. So feel free to email me and say, hey, I'd like to be on the waiting list for the June class, in which you will receive a rain barrel for $50. If you are a customer of Hernando County Utilities, you will get a $25 one-time credit on your water bill for attending a rain barrel workshop and taking the rain barrel home. Where did I go with that? In June, we'll have another virtual rain barrel and probably compost bin. To receive a compost bin, those are free from Hernando County Solid Waste. You do have to be a Hernando County resident, and you only get one per household. So email me and I'll put you on a waiting list for that. It's going to be mid-June, most likely. And it'll be a virtual evening class as well. Then there'll be a pickup time at Hernando County Utilities. If you are listening from somewhere else, far from Hernando County, but you're still interested in these topics, feel free to email me and I will send you links where you can watch videos of a rain barrel workshop and a binless compost workshop, where you can get the information, just not the items. And if you have any questions, again, here's my email, LillyB. There are 2 L's in the middle of Lilly. There are 3 L's overall in Lilly at hernandocounty.us. And also Dr. Lester, which with a much kinder, gentler email.
Much easier to remember.
wlester@ufl.edu. Feel free to put questions in the chat or email him, after the class. And now I am going to let Dr. Lester start screen sharing and bring us the Fungus Among Us. Too bad I didn't make that up, huh?
Okay, can you see that okay?
I see it fine, yes,
Okay,
except for all my little
great.
windows I have in front of it, but I imagine everyone else sees it fine. So.
I have them in front of me. I could change it so I can only see you. Okay, that's just one block I can handle, so that's better.
Okay.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about fungus or fungi today. And we were thinking about what kind of topics could we talk about as far as recyclers in the environment. Well, there's beetles, which are coming up next week. There's many insects that live in natural areas and even right out in your backyard, in your flower beds. Something that people don't think a whole lot about are fungi. And as you're going to see, it is a huge kingdom with a huge number of species that people give almost no thought to, except for fungi that really, really impact our lives. And this is a picture on the right here of a Petri dish. And I used to do some of this when I was still a student at the University of Florida. I did a semester internship at the plant disease clinic, and people would send in pictures and plant parts from infected plants, and they would be like, can you figure out what is wrong with it? And we would have to take a very small part of the leaf and dip it in a 10% bleach solution to kill the just random bacteria on the surface, and either streak a plate with a bacterial solution that we made from it, or put that little piece of leaf on a plate. And if it was a fungus, it would start to grow and spread. And within a couple of days, that little plate would be filled with this furry, nasty stuff. Then when you look at it under a microscope, you could figure out exactly what it is. So that was pretty interesting. I mixed and poured a lot of media over the years while I was still a student at UF. I got pretty good at it, I guess. But that's how we figure out what kind of fungi that we're dealing with. So the fungus or fungal kingdom, it's not nearly as popular as the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. We all know what they are. We all know about the animal kingdom and humans and animals and our pets. And of course, we all like plants. We're all familiar with the plant kingdom. But there's, depending on what resource you look at, there are different numbers of kingdoms depending on who you ask. But there's at least one or two for bacteria. We don't think a whole lot about them. And one for fungi. And like I said, we really don't think about it much unless it really impacts our lives directly. Fungi involve an enormous amount of diversity and different kinds of really unusual, almost bordering on bizarre life cycles. You might remember from high school biology that, humans and animals and plants are all made up of cells, and those cells all have a nucleus, one nucleus in the center with the DNA. Well, fungi will have two nuclei or multiple nuclei, several nuclei. A lot of species can reproduce sexually and asexually. Many of them only reproduce asexually, and they may reproduce sexually. It's just we've never been able to find that or document it. So many others, we're not even really positive exactly how they reproduce. If you look at mushrooms and fungi in your yard, exactly what they do underground, the way the cells are laid out, the diversity in the cells, it's really, for one, confusing if you have to take it at a graduate level in college. It was a very confusing class and very, very different from plants and animals. Now, something I ran across some numbers for preparing for this class. They estimate that there's probably 2.2 to 3.8 million species of fungi in the world, and we only know of 148,000. So it's one of those areas that we've literally only scratched the surface on as far as discovering different species, describing them, giving them a name, figuring out how they reproduce, what they feed on, their habits, everything else. So it's an area of a lot of ongoing research. But once again, the only ones that, researchers can find grant money for or actually work on are ones that impact us, our pets, our plants, the plants that we like and want to grow. Not a whole lot of work being done for fungi that prey on weeds and kill weeds, because, that's one of those things that we're probably okay with. But it's amazing just how many fungi are out there in the world, in the woods, in the rainforest that we don't know about. And if you think about all the different compounds they may possess and things that they could be used for as far as medicine and in many other ways, this is just an area where there's a lot more research that needs to be done. So out of all these fungi, that does include about 8,000 species that are technically plant pathogens. And that means that they prey on or feed on or interact with plants and cause disease in plants. And a couple hundred species that are human pathogens. So they interact with us and actually cause disease in human beings. So in the world of fungi, this includes a lot of different things that you may not think of. Yeasts. Yeasts are single-celled fungi that are very, very important when you're making bread or brewing beer. So very, very important fungi. They're kind of in a group or a classification by themselves because they are single-celled, and that's how they reproduce. The majority of other fungi are multi-celled and can become very, very large sometimes. Mycorrhizal fungi, and this is an area that they've done a lot of research on in recent years, and really we haven't known a whole lot about mycorrhizal fungi for that many years. I know University of Florida has had a summer course on this for students and also for growers or just interested residents. So what these fungi are, it's fungi that interact with the plant's roots, normally trees, but with many other plants also, and it forms a symbiotic relationship. And the fungus lives among the roots of the tree, and they both depend on each other for certain things. The tree will give the fungus carbon compounds as food, but these fungi are just do an amazing job of mining phosphorus and other nutrients out of the soil. So they mine phosphorus and give it to the tree root. The tree root says thank you and gives carbon compounds and nitrogen to the mycorrhizal fungi, and the two of them just have this relationship that benefits both of them. And they found through a lot of research, there are trees that do not grow very well at all if they don't have their mycorrhizal fungi living amongst their roots. And if you go to one of the large forests out west, I know Oregon, Washington State, or even an area, if you look at Lilly's picture there, the trees in the background there, and start looking through the soil in old growth forests, every tree species has its own specific species of mycorrhizae fungi that it depends on. It can grow and survive without it, but it doesn't grow well and happily without it. So this is something that we're trying to understand better. You can go online and buy mycorrhizal fungi to add to your garden, but there's about 1 million different species of it out there. And unless you know what plant you're growing and exactly what fungi you need for it, you're just kind of guessing. So the ones that they sell and market right now, I really don't know from personal experience whether they're effective or not. They may or may not be, but it's an area that they're still doing a lot of research, especially in the forestry world. Fungi are very, very important for breaking things down for anybody who might have a compost bin or a compost pile. And Lilly mentioned earlier about our compost bin classes, where if you're a Hernando County resident, you can actually get a bin, just one per household, but you get the bin for free. You start making your own compost. What happens to shredded paper and grass clippings and kitchen scraps and things like that that you put in a pile is bacteria and fungi naturally work on those ingredients and consume them and break them down into a different form, or break them down basically into compost, which when it is mixed in with the soil, breaks down a little bit further, and plant roots can use to get nutrients from. And it also works very, very well to hold in additional water, because your sandy soil doesn't hold water very well. Compost holds it better, holds fertilizer nutrients better. So fungi are very important in the entire composting process. Mushrooms, you guys hopefully all know that mushrooms are fungi, and I love mushrooms. But I don't eat mushrooms that grow in my front yard or backyard or the woods or anything else. You must be very careful here in Florida eating the mushrooms, because we have so many different species. And so many of them are poisonous, but they look just like one. Shiitakes or something else, some other gourmet mushroom that's very, very tasty. I can't tell the difference between them. And a lot of times the experts at UF can't tell from just looking at them if what you have is the safe one or the dangerous one. So we recommend that you don't eat wild mushrooms, that you either buy them from a grocery store, and they have a lot more than just white mushrooms now. They have portobellos and shiitakes and criminis, something like that. but they have a variety of them at the store, and I love all of them. Hopefully you guys do too, because they can be very healthy for you. Or you could try growing your own. You can buy a kit and you can inoculate a log with fungal spores, and then that edible mushroom is going to grow on that log. If you look online, there's a lot of companies that sell that, and it makes a great hobby. I've never tried it before. I need to do that someday, try growing my own mushrooms. Fungi also include many modern antibiotics. Penicillium is a genus of fungi. And so in the world of penicillium, there's a lot of different species, and the antibiotic penicillin, that's where it comes from. It was discovered during World War II, and bacteria and fungi have this really interesting battle out there in the environment. They try to push the other one out and conquer the space. So bacteria will make things that are toxic to other bacteria and fungi, and that's where we get some antibiotics from. Fungi can do the same thing. They create substances that kill all the bacteria and push them out of their little space or niche in the environment. So from looking at and researching both of those, we can find things that, oh, a fungus makes that kills bacteria. That comes in really handy if you have a bacterial infection, or bacteria that create things that might kill fungi. That comes in handy if you have a fungal infection. And then another one of my favorites, blue cheese, is blue cheese, and I think Roquefort and some other very, very strong flavored cheeses are created when you culture the milk product, whether it be, cow's milk or goat milk or whatever, with a specific kind of fungus, and that's what turns it into cheese. I'm not an expert at cheese making. I think that they have shows on NPR on making cheese, and you can find a lot of information online. But blue cheese comes from the action of fungi on milk, and it is, I like it, one of my favorites. So there are a huge number of different fungi that cause plant problems out in the environment, a lot of which we have to answer questions on, and people will send us pictures like the ones I'm going to show you, or they bring in leaves. And a lot of times we can't tell from just looking at it what species it is. We can tell from looking closely at it, especially under a microscope, that it's a fungus, but we can't always tell exactly what species of fungus it is. So a really common one is Cercospora, and that's just a common leaf spot fungus. So whether you have roses or tomatoes, this is common on tomatoes, fruit trees, if the leaves start to get these little brown spots on them, it could be a fungus, it could be a bacteria, but it's probably a fungus. But it's really hard for us to tell just looking at it which fungus it is. But we could tell you that it's a fungus. So Cercospora is a really common one. For anybody that tries growing hydrangeas in your yard, Cercospora is really common. It'll make little brown spots that have a purplish halo around the edge. That's an easy way for us to know that it's Cercospora. Thalia, and I can never say this word, I don't know why. I pronounce it Phalaenopsis. So Phalaenopsis on palm trees is another not really common fungal disease, but it's a pretty serious one because it will attack palm trees. And it gets into palm trees when they're over pruned or when they're damaged, when the trunk is damaged or has a lot of cracking in it. And the fungus will move into the tree and it starts feeding on the fibers that hold the palm tree erect in the trunk. So it never happens like at ground level or even knee level. It always happens a little higher up. There's another fungus that does happen down close to ground level, but they damage the trunk and weaken it. And there are cases where the palm tree just falls over, just like this picture here. And sometimes like in a urban area, like in a downtown city or around a government building, the palm tree looks fine. You never know there was anything wrong. All of a sudden one day it just goes plop and falls over. And I know that I have seen pictures of where they fall over and hit cars. I've never heard of them hitting people, but obviously this, kind of presents a danger out there also. So this is something that we don't see very often, but it is out there. I know they have more problems in Sumter County in the villages than we do here, but it does happen. Alternaria is another genus of fungi that there's a huge number of species, and it attacks tomatoes. There's different specific species that attack a number of vegetable crops. It attacks palm trees and causes disease. And it's just another really generic, common brown fungal leaf spot kind of disease. So if you look at this picture of the tomatoes, and if you remember the one of Cercospora, they look very similar. Really hard to tell from just looking at it which it is, but it's a very serious plant disease and causes a lot of damage on a lot of different crops. And gray leaf spot is another fungus. It is a, what is that? That's one that attacks grasses. It's a fungal leaf spot that attacks St. Augustine grass. So if you have a St. Augustine lawn, during the summer when it gets really wet and humid, if you get down on your hands and knees and look through your lawn real closely, I can almost guarantee you that you'll find some of this. And it's just different shaped, generally round circles that turn gray, and eventually the center will fall out. Pardon me?
You were looking for the word. I was wondering.
Oh, no. Pittosporum is a plant. This is
no,
a
I'm
rust.
Sorry. Yeah, I know.
A rust. That's what I was looking for.
Rust. Okay. Yeah, there's a P word that's a fungus, though, too.
Well, we have a couple more, so, but.
Okay. All right, I'll let you go.
Okay. This is a type of rust fungus. So rusts will cause spots or diseased areas on a plant. And if you look at them under a microscope, you'll just see this whole microscopic little world of the fungus growing on the surface of the leaf, and it's sending up little reproductive structures, and they have spores at the end because that's how fungi reproduce. They make spores that blow in the wind. So gray leaf spot is another really common fungus. I almost never see it cause serious damage to a lawn, but if you have a lot of it, it probably is going to look a little unsightly. And we do get calls from people concerned about it. Oh my gosh, this is going to kill my lawn. No, it's always out in the summer. When things cool off and dry up a little bit in the fall, it'll go away. But it is going to damage your lawn, but probably won't kill it. There are other fungi that can kill your lawn. This one won't do that. So real quickly, because I'm not really a medical doctor, but there are a lot of fungi that can cause diseases in human beings. Fungal nail infections that people might get on their fingernails or toenails are caused by fungi. Ringworm is caused by a fungus, and ringworm you can get on you. I know kids get it from playing outdoors a lot and rolling around in the grass and grassy areas. It can get on your skin and it starts to grow as a circle. What that is that fungus growing in a circular way and spreading. Valley fever, and there are a couple other fungi that are related to this, and this is not a problem here in Florida, but out west in the Southwest and out in California, where it gets very dry and dusty and windy in the summer, these are fungi that live in the soil. So if you think about it, if you live in California, out in the desert, or New Mexico or Arizona, it gets really windy, really dusty. If you breathe that in, you're breathing in fungal spores. And for the vast majority of people, it's not a problem. They don't develop any disease. Your immune system is able to fight it off. But occasionally for children and for immunocompromised individuals, the fungal spores will germinate inside of them, and it causes disease and kills a handful of people every year. So like I said, it's not a problem here, but if any of you have spent time or moved here from out west, maybe you're a bit more familiar with it out there. Aspergillosis, which is caused by a very common, basically bread mold, aspergillus. If you take a piece of bread and throw it on the counter, you know, after a couple of days or a week, it's going to get fuzzy and furry and different colors. It might be gray or black. I think Aspergillus is generally black bread mold. And if you look at it under a microscope, that fuzz looks like a whole forest of little fungal trees. And on the top are little circles where it makes the spores. And it's almost like a little Dr. Seuss kingdom under the microscope, if you look at it. But when that fungus grows, and especially if it gets in your house, into the walls, into the flooring, into the carpeting, something like that, and starts to make spores in an enclosed area, if you breathe those spores in, that can make you very, very sick. So Aspergillus and a number of other fungi are the ones that make mold spores inside of wet or contaminated or previously flooded houses. And of course, athlete's foot fungus is a fungus also. That happens if you go to the gym or YMCA, I guess, if you're not very careful. So those things are out there. There are some fungi that damage wood products. This is a picture of blue stain fungi. And what happens is, this is a little hard to tell, but let's just pretend that this was a pine tree. And it was probably a fine looking, healthy pine tree. They cut it down for timber to cut it up into boards, but it has a fungus that grew inside of it. And as it grew inside, it dyed or stained the wood. So now you have this blue staining inside of it. And it makes it either unusable or worthless for lumber or very difficult. If you go to a lumber yard or Lowe's or Home Depot and start looking at the wood, you'll find some wood that has a little bit of staining to it. It's safe to use. It's not gonna, like fill your house with mold and make you sick. It's just not everybody wants to buy lumber that has blue staining on it. So this is one of those forestry kind of issues that is a problem out there that can, obviously impact commerce and, lumber companies' profitability. But getting into some of the different fungi that are recyclers and help break things down, fungi kind of fall into two really big groups here. One group is parasites, and the other one is called saprophytes. So parasites are fungi that have to feed on and prey on something that's alive. So a lot of the fungi that cause diseases in humans and the ones that cause diseases in plants, they need a live human or a live plant to act as a host, and that's what they feed on and get their nutrition from. Other fungi, and there's a lot of them out there, are saprophytes, and they just feed on dead stuff. They feed on fallen leaves and dead trees and broken down wood and all different, stages of decomposition, and that's what they use as a food source. And sometimes, especially if they're mushrooms, they'll make reproductive fruiting structures that we call mushrooms, and they're going to become very, very visible and very noticeable to you. But they're always out there. They're always working hard to break things down in the forest, in your flower beds, and in your garden also. So if you're looking for good picture opportunities or some really amazing, colorful things, the next few pictures here Lilly took during one of her hikes out in the woods in her background there, I guess, out behind her house. And you don't have to go very far into the woods to find either dying trees or dead trees or fallen trees that have all kinds of different shelf fungi growing on them. They're all different sizes, shapes, colors. Here's another one here that's very, very common. It almost looks like kind of white leaves on the side of that trunk. And this is obviously a tree that's already dead and fallen. And these fungi will all, and there's probably dozens of species on just this one tree that are all feeding on it, working on it to help break it down. There's insects that are all part of this also. If we roll the log over, we'll find beetles. We'll find beetles inside of the trunk. We'll find termites, ants, all kinds of other things that are all using this as a food source and working together to break it down, turn it into compost, and return it back to the soil. So this one here is growing out of a tree that looks like that's obviously still standing. So this is probably a species of Armalleria. And Armalleria is a genus of fungi. It can attack palm trees, but there's different species that attack a wide variety of trees out there in the environment. If you have a tree in your yard and you see shelf fungi or mushrooms like this coming out of it, that's a very bad sign. Your tree is dead. It just hasn't fallen over or lost all of its leaves yet. What happens is Armalleria, a lot of times is a mushroom or a root rot kind of fungus that will get into a tree, or even sometimes hedges in front of your house. It'll get into ligustrums and viburnums and all kinds of other shrubs, goes in through the roots, moves up into the trunk, and then when it gets well established, it wants to reproduce. To do so, it goes to the outside of the trunk, and like in this picture, makes mushrooms. In hedge bushes, can make smaller shelf fungi to reproduce. So when by the time we get to the point where you see the shelf fungi, it's way, way, way too late to do anything. These things are really hard to deal with, because even if you think, oh, okay, well, I have Armalleria on my tree or my bush, I'll just pull it up and I'll replace it with another one. That's not going to work, because the fungus is in the soil now. You're going to have to replace a lot of soil or pick a different plant that is not susceptible to the species of Armalleria that you had a problem with. So this is one of those things, it's just naturally out there. It's in the soils, it's throughout the woods. Totally normal to see it on trees that are sick and dying or in the process of dying. It tends to finish off already weakened, damaged trees, and is usually not a problem with otherwise healthy young trees. Lichens, and oh boy, we get a lot of calls and emails about lichens. People think, they say, I have a tree and I have the stuff growing on it. It's killing my tree. What do I do to get rid of it? If your tree is your tree may be dying, but it's not going to be dying from lichens. Lichens, like on the picture here of a tree trunk out in the woods, they come in all kinds of different colors. It could be, the really pretty ones are red or really pale greenish. There's lots of white and black and everything in between. Lichens are a combination of a fungus and an algae that live together and have a symbiotic relationship, and they do not hurt trees when they're growing on them. If that tree dies from some other reason, or starts to become really, really sick, damaged, weakened, or is in the process of dying, the lichens will move in and start to feed on it, along with a lot of other things, to finish the tree off and start the whole process of decomposition. But lichens are never the cause of a tree's death. If your tree or crepe myrtle has problems with lichens or Spanish moss or ball moss, it has some other underlying problem that's encouraging the lichens or the Spanish moss to just go crazy and reproduce on it. So you have to look a little bit deeper if your tree has a problem, but lichens, they're not a problem. Ganoderma is another one of those. It's a genus of fungi that live out in the forest, and there's a huge number of species. Every tree species has, as a general rule, a species of Ganoderma that will feed on it, and once again get into the tree, move up through the tree, and then make these conchs or shelf fungi that come out. So you'll see them on trees in the woods, and the picture on the right here is a palm tree. And this is another, not really common, but we do get it occasionally, palm issue or disease, even here in Hernando County. If you have a palm tree and it has little things like this sticking out of it now that look like a half a mushroom, that is a really, really bad sign. That means it has Ganoderma. It's also called Ganoderma butt rot, because it's a fungus that gets into a palm tree and does that down there at near ground level. And at that point, there's nothing you can do to save that palm tree. And when you have Ganoderma in the soil, we would not recommend you replant with another palm tree. You're going to have to find something else to replant with. And it stays in the soil. So if you cut down and remove this palm tree. You could put an oak tree in, but there's types of Ganoderma that attack oak trees and every other tree out in the forest. If your oak tree dies, you could replace it with a palm, but you're not going to want to replace it with another tree of the same species. So this is just another fungus that's out there that we see on occasion that's a problem with plants. So with that, that's about all I have, guys. Let's go ahead and...
The Pythium, that's the one I was trying to remember.
Pythium, yes,
Yeah.
Pythium is a soil-borne, it is a water mold. It's not even a fungus. Well,
Cool.
in some books, they put it in a group called fungal-like organisms.
Okay.
In other classifications, it's in a category by itself, technically a branch of the animal kingdom, I think. So it is a water mold, but it's a fungal-like organism.
So as a water mold, though, this is something we could run across possibly in our plants due to our irrigation systems or even heavy rains.
Yes, Pythium and Rhizoctonia. Rhizoctonia is a true fungus that lives in the soil, and Pythium is a fungal-like organism that lives in the soil. And with both of them, they like lots and lots of water, and they're always in the soil. They're always trying to attack your plants, your bushes, your trees, but they're able to fight them off as long as they're otherwise young, healthy, and in good shape. If your trees and bushes start to get damaged, diseased in other ways, worn out, too old, people don't realize that your hedge bushes aren't going to live for 100 years. They're not going to live for 50 years. They're technically good for anywhere from 10 to 20 years. That depends on a lot of things, what hedge bush we're talking about, what kind of soil it's growing in, but eventually your hedges will die and have to be replaced. But as they get older and weaker, they're going to become more susceptible. They're going to just eventually get worn out, and the Pythium and Rhizoctonia and water molds are going to win. And now all of a sudden, during the summer, when it's raining every day, you walk outside, one of your hedge bushes, plop, turns brown and dies. It just gave up. Sometimes it just gave up. A lot of times it's just a random root rot that got the upper hand on the bush. But watering too much along with the rain is not good. It is possible to overwater your plants. So too much can be a bad thing. And over mulching, if you keep mulching and now you have 8 inches of mulch, when the soil gets wet, it can never dry out through that mulch. So now your bushes are all growing in mud when we get rain every day during the summer. And in that case, the root rots are going to win out, and your bushes, or potentially trees. We see arborvitaes, we see viburnums, we see any kind of evergreen except for southern red cedars succumb to these things during the summer from root rots.
Yeah, Leland cypress. Yes.
Yeah. My favorite, Arizona cypress. Okay, what is Florida weather not like? Arizona.
Well, just be very quiet
very
because
different.
your little picture is approximately 20 feet from one of my Arizona cypresses. So I want you to be really quiet. Don't let it hear you.
And they'll do well for years. Arborvitaes are another funny one. They'll grow fine for 5-10 years. And all of a sudden, and it's almost always during the summer, overnight, boom, they'll die.
Yeah.
And so root rot just eventually got the upper hand and took it out.
Probably the answer, if you have any of those, is don't water them. Let nature water them, and that you might extend their life.
Sure, because we always ask about people's irrigation and how many irrigation heads they have. Your grass may need extra water. Your plants, your trees, palm trees, bushes, hedges, after they're established, don't need nearly as much water as grass does. And you may end up overwatering them and unintentionally damaging them or killing them because of that.
Do you see Kathy's questions about milkweed?
Yes. What kind of rust or other issues can you get on milkweeds? I'm not sure if I've ever seen true rusts on milkweeds. Milkweeds get,
Usually they get eaten by things before they develop any kind of problems like that. The caterpillars or the milkweed bugs usually get them first.
yes, you do get the oleander aphids, which are very brightly colored aphids on milkweeds. Milkweeds can get a number of other fungi for really different plants. The only control for a fungus growing on a plant is to use a fungicide on it. If you're wanting some kind of organic or less toxic treatment, copper fungicides are labeled for use in organic production. There are a number of other fungicides out there that are not labeled for organic production. They're effective, but it's kind of your choice whether you're comfortable using them on your plants or your property or not. Like Lily said, a lot of times milkweeds, once you get caterpillars on them, boom, those leaves are just going to disappear, and it's
Right.
going to have to sprout more leaves.
It could be a matter of if there's an overhead sprinkler. First of all, if you plant the milkweed and get it established, you shouldn't need to be watering that either. But if there's an overhead sprinkler or a sprinkler that's bouncing off of a wall and hitting the leaves, for any plant, then you can invite problems like that.
Sure, it's a really good idea to try your very best to keep the leaves on all your plants as dry as you can. So overhead irrigation. Now, we can't do anything about the rain. We can't
No.
control that. But that's one of the reasons why, as we start to get into rainy season, the humidity goes up and we get those really late in the day rains. That's when fungal problems start to dramatically increase.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're watering your milkweeds or any other plants, try to keep the leaves dry. If you get the leaves wet, try to water early in the day so the leaves are going to dry off when the sun comes up during the day. And that will help with reducing the incidence of fungal problems. But a lot of other things, you're going to have to plan on using a fungicide. Citrus, tomatoes,
Roses.
definitely roses, definitely
Yeah.
squash and cucumbers, those kind of things. If you're not using a fungicide on them, you're not going to get very far with them in Central Florida.
And I read something recently that regarding the lichen, they have recently, and this just shows how they're learning stuff all the time. Somebody pinpointed there's yeast involved with the lichens as well. So, I mean,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, yes, but they've narrowed it down through that particular, probably fungus as well, but they have found that yeast plays a part in the creation of lichen. And also, we didn't show a picture of it, but you mentioned crepe myrtles, and that made me think of it. Sometimes the lichen gets like a little, green and leafy and like little hairy spirals, coming out of it. So people think their tree is being attacked by something harmful. And as Bill said, it's not harmful at all. And that pink lichen that we had the picture of, people collect it online. Please don't remove it from nature, but people do collect it. They get big money for it. Not sure why, but anyway, the pink is an indicator of good air quality. So be happy if you see that, around your yard. And the picture behind me, and most of those pictures were taken at the Chinsegat, the Withlacoochee Forest. This is a big pine track behind me. And some of the shelf conchs were taken at the Cypress Lakes. It's part of the environmentally sensitive land we have here in Hernando County. So there are all kinds of woodsy places that you can find all these things and have fun with your camera as well.
Sure. And if you go out for a hike in the woods, you don't have to go far at all until you're finding all kinds of lichens and shelf fungi and everything else. And there's just huge amount of diversity. And like I said, colors, shapes. You could make a photography hobby out of just photographing those things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Those shelf ones and the conch ones are really intricate, and they're doing a job. I mean, you talk about them, because you are a plant doctor, as as a disease or as a problem, but in the woods and in nature, as you mentioned with that one that had so many different species on it, they're all doing their job along with the insects to break all this down and return to the earth, really, and start all over again. So, are there any other questions that we have? If not, we might wrap this. Yeah, we might wrap this up a little bit early next week. Be sure to join Dr. Lester. Tell us what you have planned for next week, where we can meet the Beetles. I had to throw a Beetles reference in.
Yeah. I know you always try to squeeze that in, but we'll be talking about different common beetles and the roles that they play in the environment. Many of them are a part of this entire recycling process. A lot of people will see beetles in their house, on their sidewalk, in their driveway, out in the flower beds, and they're wondering, is this a bad beetle? Is it a good one? What are they doing out there? Are they eating my house? Are they trying to, bite me and kill my children or whatever? So we're going to go over the most common ones and what they're doing outside. And you'll see the vast majority of them are all just part of a natural, important cycle that's going on in your flower beds, in your lawn, if you have a larger property, in your wooded areas. And we are going to try something a little bit different. We're going to try some basically virtual show and tell. So we're going to get the iPad out and actually show everybody some different beetle specimens so that you'll know exactly what they look at and how big they are. Because when I show it on a PowerPoint and I show a bark beetle that's the size of a grain of pepper, you may go home thinking that, well, that beetle's like this big. That's how big it looked on the screen. It's really hard to get a general size idea unless we show it to you in a camera in my hand and, kind of pointing out it's really small or this one's really big. And we do have live beetles here at the office. We have a whole little menagerie here that Teresa raises and takes care of here. Oh, wow. So it'll be great. And we'll have fun and we'll try to make it experimental and we'll find out how much, if you guys like it or not, if you want us to keep doing it that way.
So the beetles are good. Yes. They love you. Yeah.
Yes. Now there are good beetles. There's bad beetles. Knowing the difference is important, but the majority of them are good. I can think of a few that you really don't want to find in your house. We'll talk about them. I'll bring in the beetle collection and we'll go through a whole bunch of different common ones that you would find either inside or outside your house, and which ones are bad news and which ones are just catch it and put it back outside.
There you go. And that'll be next Tuesday, the 27th.
Yes, ma'am.
Same time, sort of the same place. Just look under the events and get the link for that particular
virtual world here on Zoom.
Virtual world. Yes. Well, who knows where I will be next week, what kind of background I will have next week. But thank you, everybody. And we will see you next week. And have a great week. Join Bill and I Thursday, 10 o'clock for the virtual plant clinic. And you can find how to get on there at what is your Hernando EXT Facebook page?
Yes, and the best place to find out about all of our classes and activities is www.hernandoextension, all one word, .com. And that way you can find out about our classes, the virtual plant clinic, Lily's classes, beetle classes, when the beetles are coming to town, everything.
There you go. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great week.